Joining us right now in a Fox Business exclusive, former National Security Advisor under President Reagan, Robert McFarlane. Robert, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for joining us. Give us your expectations, the realistic expectations of what might come out of this meeting.
Well, I think one thing is being missed entirely in reporting right now about this summit, Maria, and that is that Putin is trying to expand his influence well beyond what he already has achieved in Ukraine and Syria. He's trying to become the dominant power in the Middle East, with all that means for control of Suez, Hormuz, the price of oil. He's doing it by the ability to sell nuclear power into these countries, and he's already got a contract in Egypt for building 4 plants, 2 more in Turkey, 2 more in Jordan. But the point is, when you put yourself in a position to literally turn the lights off in a country, you've achieved enormous political power. So Putin is moving inexorably to displace the United States. This has been our region where we pledged to maintain the security of the Middle East for good reason 70 years ago. And today, you'd have to say that Putin is moving to move us out, move his country in, and dominate a strategic, pivotal connection of 3 continents, with all that implies for commerce. About 40% of the world's commerce goes through Suez. The price of oil, of course, is important dramatically, not so much to us, but to Asia and to Europe. So allowing him to consolidate the dominant influence in that part of the world is very much against our interest. Well, just as you told another guest here a moment ago, our performance thus far hasn't been very good. That so-called agreement to keep Russian forces and Assad forces in place and not to move beyond established de-escalation zones has been neglected, ignored, and today we're very much at risk of making lines in the sand, which, when they're breached and violated, we do nothing about it. In short, the goal here is going to be inform the American people, first of all. The Middle East is going nuclear. We don't want that nuclear future to be controlled by Russia or China. The United States, for 70 years, has set the rules, the safety precautions, the security, the non-proliferation standards, and if we turn that over to Russia, the game is over in the Middle East, Maria.
Is there anything that the president can do to stop this? I mean, obviously, he's got deals in Egypt and Turkey and elsewhere. What can President Trump do about it?
Well, our own nuclear industry is in very bad shape. We haven't built a plant here for almost 30 years successfully. So, first of all, he should focus on rebuilding that capability. Only with our own industry can we demonstrate the credibility of setting the rules in the rest of the world. So, at home, focus on rebuilding our own industry, which is in terrible shape. But secondly,
Robert, Steve Forbes here. Isn't it the real weakness of Putin's policy in the Middle East, Iran? And what should we be doing more to undermine the Iranian regime? If Iran falls from the mullahs, boy, Russia's whole policy goes up the way Egypt threw Russia out in the early 1970s. Isn't that what we should be focusing on?
Well, Iran clearly is ascendant in the sense that with the future we've given them of being able to move toward a nuclear weapons program, it has intimidated the rest of the Sunni Arab world and stimulated what is likely to become very soon a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Iran is a wealthy country. It has a lot of oil, as you know, Steve. Russia has the ability to dominate decision-making in Iran by virtue of selling them sophisticated air defense weapons and other weapons, and also to assure security of arms supply. And so it's very much in Putin's interest to maintain his relationship with Iran.
It is, but with the weakness of the Iranian regime, it's one thing to prop up Syria, and even that has been harder, I think, than Putin anticipated, how weak that's been. But to try to prop up Iran, what can we do to keep undermining Iran? The regime, the economy is weak, inflation is taking off, people hate the regime. This would seem a prime way of just totally upending Putin's plans to dominate the Middle East?
Well, there's several things we could be doing, but you're spot on, Steve, about the Iranian people very much against what the regime, the mullahs, have been doing with the money that they have, and that is spending it on far-flung missions in Syria and aggression, propping up the Hezbollah, using surrogate forces to do things outside the country that don't benefit the Iranian people. We ought to resurrect what we had in the Reagan years of a broadcasting program that reaches into the grassroots of Iran, begin to stimulate formation of parties. In short, make clear that the United States is not going to abandon the ability to influence stability throughout the Middle East, from Iran to Egypt and all points between.